What's up, everybody? Welcome in to a W edition of SSPN. Ethan, this
Mm.
was the Spurs' second overtime win. Actually, the Spurs now 2-1 on the
Mm.
season in overtime. So Wemby, he's got the over 500 record now in overtime officially, but still in a season that is what it is, with this
Mm.
being the Spurs' 15th win of the season here on March 17th. Um, those are the little things that you can cling on to, Ethan, to be happy about and try to have a positive outlook for moving forward. But more importantly, this was just a super fun game. I don't know if this was the best game of the season, but this was definitely probably in my top 5. It was competitive throughout. We were just talking about it before stream. There were so many momentum swings both
Mm.
ways. There was one point where Brooklyn went up by 10 like late in the third quarter. Kind of felt like things were about to start going in their direction. That even happened in the fourth quarter as well.
Yeah.
I'm mixing that up a little bit, but the point is, tons of momentum swings, lots of different moments where we weren't sure if the Spurs were going to pull it out, but they kept finding ways. They kept answering, whether it was overtime, the second half, the first half, and they pulled out a wonderful 122 to 115 victory in overtime in Austin to complete our prediction, Ethan, of losing the first game to the Denver Nuggets in Austin, but pulling out this Sunday night win against the Brooklyn Nets. Ethan, give me your thoughts.
Great summary, Jude. Obviously feels fantastic, especially when it's only the 15th win of the year. The Spurs stepped in, it felt like every hole imaginable as far as, okay, we're not hitting threes. Okay, we're playing a little sloppy right now. We're turning the ball over. We're letting the Nets go on momentous runs. They're up 10-0. They got guys like Dennis Smith Jr. hounding us on defense, getting easy layups, getting dunks on Wemby in transition. But at the end of the day, we kept our focus. We stopped the bleeding, like Two Clutch Glory is saying in the comments section. And our big three in Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, and Keldon Johnson were big at separate moments to both keep us in the game and then propel us to victory when it counted in that fourth quarter and in overtime. So, like you said, very enjoyable game. If you didn't watch it, please go back and watch at least the fourth quarter and overtime. It'd definitely be worth your time.
Yeah, at least the highlights, if not that. This
Mm-hmm.
is a game that is one of the better ones of the year and was super competitive from both sides overall. Like, I
For
think the
sure.
biggest lead from either team. Well, here, let's go ahead and check the team stats. We might as well while I'm talking about it. I believe it was Brooklyn at 11. But let's see here. What do we
Largest
got?
lead, 11. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. And the largest lead for the Spurs is 7. So that's just a testament to how close this game was. And Ethan,
Mhm.
normally this is the time where we go ahead and jump into the box score and give our team awards. But we're just going to keep it real. My boy, you got to go get some food. You have not been able to eat yet tonight. So we're going to go ahead and skip the awards for tonight. But I think here's what I'll say, Ethan. At the beginning of the season, we said the Spurs have a really good chance to win every game they're in
Mm.
if Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and Victor Wembanyama all have 20 plus points. Well, tonight, all had at least 24 points, 25
Mm.
from Devin, 24 from Keldon, and 33, of course, for Victor. We haven't even talked about Victor's stat line yet. I think we do need to talk about that, Ethan, before
Of
we get into
course.
the game flow, because 33, 16, 7 assists, and 7 blocks, one of them being the most clutch blocks of the game to secure the win, really, for the Spurs, blocking Dennis Schroeder on a layup attempt, trying to take
Mhm.
what would have been a 1 point lead. Obviously, the Spurs had to make some free throws after that.
Yep.
Well, it actually was a layup by Keldon Johnson, but then even after that, Keldon had to make some free throws to really secure the win after getting fouled on an offensive rebound, which was a clutch rebound as well. But not to jump too far out there. The point is, those guys all having these type of games, the Spurs are going to have a chance. And Victor's stat line, this is one of his best of the year.
Oh, I mean, most definitely. 33, 16, 7 to 7, like you said. Every game, it feels like he's filling it up with video game numbers and proving our point and proving Draymond Green's point. I don't know if you saw this, Jude, but recently Draymond Green said Wemby is a top 20 player in the league right now. And I think we could pretty confidently agree with that point. Um, the only negative is obviously our record, but that's not his fault. So continue doing what he's doing. He's becoming our franchise player before our very eyes.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on Keldon. You see the efficiency with his
Mhm.
shooting tonight. 5 for 8 from three. That clutch one late in the game after missing three straight. After starting the game on fire,
Mhm.
4 from 4 with an and one on the last. But the other thing that sticks out, the highest plus minus on the team tonight as well at plus 14.
Yep.
A super efficient game from him. Those 5 boards, a lot of those were in crucial situations. And this is one of Keldon's better games of the year. And it really did remind me, Ethan, and I'm sure I'm getting deja vu because I was at the Portland Trailblazers game last year where Keldon scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to kind of
Mm.
secure the victory and then talk to the crowd afterwards, just like he did tonight. If y'all didn't see that, go check out Keldon's post crowd interview. He said the Spurs fans are the best in the world and was doing a lot of yelling. So that was super fun. But yeah, it was very reminiscent of the Portland game last year in the way that he just took over and really fed off of the energy in Austin. That's something that,
Mhm.
we always talk about Keldon's energy, but you can really see it being taken advantage of in this scenario where you're kind of playing in like it's a home crowd, but it's still, it's a different type of energy than just, the normal, not, I don't want to say monotony, but just for the sake of this conversation, monotony
Mhm.
of the regular season.
For sure. He needs all the praises, all the roses for tonight because there was like a moment in that first quarter where the Nets looked like they were about to go on a little bit of a run. And obviously we weren't shooting well as a team, only 24% from 3-point land. And those four threes back to back to back to back, pretty much, with the last one being an and one, were huge to just keep us in the game. And you're right, his energy, his leadership, his motor, yelling at his teammates, yelling at the opponents, yelling at the crowd, all of it was important. Not all of it will show up on the stat sheet. It just so happened that he also had a great stat sheet night with 24 points and 5 rebounds as well.
Absolutely. And before we get into the game flow here, Ethan, just one more thing I want to touch on. Of course, Devin Vassell, as we were just talking about, but 8 assists for him tonight, which is the team high. That's something that, probably when you're watching the game, you maybe don't notice. It doesn't pop off the screen, but when you look up at the end of the game, he's got 8 assists. So
Yep.
Devin's playmaking, we saw a lot of two-man game work with him, with whoever was playing the post, whether that was Zach or that
Mhm.
was Wemby. Obviously, the end of the game had a lot of, just high screen and rolls with Wemby. And I wasn't mad at that being the offense and the
Nope.
clutch whatsoever. Those are your most two trustworthy off the dribble guys. But the last thing I want to say about Devin, and I believe we mentioned this in our last Warriors post game that we did, Ethan. In that game, I think he had like 17 points, but 15 of the 17 were on 5 threes, and then he made only one other shot. And what I was saying in that post game was like, well, this is how this game went. There's also been other games where Devin has proved
Mhm.
that even if his 3-point shooting isn't going well, he can find other ways to score. Tonight was a perfect example of that. Only had 2 free throws. So the rest of those 25 points, other than the 1 3 he had, were all in the mid range layups off the dribble. Just another example of how Devin, whether his three's on or it's off, he's able
Mhm.
to find ways to score, which is a progression this season, I would say.
For sure. And to add on to what you just said, a lot of those points came late in the game in situations where we were trying to take the lead in that fourth quarter and in the overtime period. Because the first 3 quarters, it was kind of pretty slow for Devin. Like we were really depending a lot on KJ and Wemby to get us those points. He caught fire late, but I'm not mad at him. He still finished the game strong.
Yeah, absolutely, Ethan. But let's go ahead and hop into this game flow. So I'll start it off with the first quarter, then I'll dish it to you for the second. But the first thing I have written down, a tough layup from Trey Jones to start. He had a couple of those tonight, but he was dribbling through some guys. Wemby set the tone, blocking McHale in the mid range. He
Mm.
was active early overall. But the other person who was active overall on the other side of the court, who was active all game, ended with 31 points was Cam Thomas, man.
Yeah.
You know how we've been talking about how all these trade prospects, Ethan, and how it's like, oh,
Mhm.
who knows who's available or whatever. You know what I mean? We could say Darius Garland, we could say Tyrese Maxey, we could say Trey Young. There's all these names swirling. This is one where I was watching tonight. I was like, I'd like Cam Thomas if we could just get him somehow. you know,
Mhm.
I know his game is similar to Devin, but at 6'3", he's somebody who could be a ball handler. And just imagine the two-man game with him and Wemby with the stuff you saw from him tonight. I
Yeah.
mean, he can just contort himself. in a bunch of different angles. I may have a little bit of bias towards Cam as well because he's an LSU alum, but that's aside from the point. The point is he asserted himself early, and that, he was a problem for us all game, and it was from the jump. We had some turnovers, some fouls, some missed shots, and that was kind of mucking things up a little bit early. I think we were still only down 6-4 when I wrote that down, but still, there were some missed opportunities early. There was a fantastic pass from Jeremy to Victor on an and one dunk in transition. Sean even said on the broadcast that it might be Jeremy's best setup to Victor all year. He kind of lulled the defense to sleep a little bit, driving towards the free throw line, and then had a little dump off to Victor, who was cleared for takeoff after that. Cam Thomas was cooking. It's too easy for him. That's what I had written down. So once again, that's a theme. Victor was playing better against Nick Claxton from the jump in comparison to last game. He was using his length. He was trying to match his physicality. And that was big from the start because he had a big game against them last time in Brooklyn. Keldon had a high energy turnover on defense to start. Immediately, he came in and hounded Dorian Finney-Smith and forced a turnover for him to kind of like slide out of bounds and force a turnover. And that was really just, that set the tone for Keldon on the night. The other thing, and I was listening to another Spurs podcast, Ethan, dare I say I was cheating on us? No.
How dare you?
Shout out to Paul Garcia of the Spurs cast at Project Spurs. I was listening to his Spurs cast that he dropped yesterday, and he was dropping a lot of like, and sometimes I don't always say that these obscure metrics and stats have that much merit. Like, they've got to match the eye test as well. But I thought this was an example that was something, a metric that also matches the eye test. And that's Blake's ball pressure. It's definitely a difference when he comes on the floor in comparison to Trey Jones. And that's not me trying to take a shot at Trey Jones. He had a really solid game, efficient game tonight. If we were doing unsung hero, he might get that award tonight. 3 steals, 11 points, 7 assists, efficient, facilitated, all that good stuff. But defensively, just bluntly, Blake has a higher ceiling and he has more physical gifts. And that was just something I was listening to that podcast, and he was giving all these stats on how Blake is like, he leads the Spurs in deflections per 36 minutes. And then there was another stat as well that he leads the Spurs in, but essentially it just speaks to his defensive activity, getting hands in passing lanes, and all the good things that he does on the defensive end of the floor. And so because I'd listened to that, that stood out to me when I saw him come on the floor. Devin and Zach in the 2-man game was solid offense with Wemby off the floor. Zach had 2 assists tonight. I believe both of those were to Devin in the 2-man game, but still he had a lot of hockey assists kind of working out of that hub. We've been seeing that more, and that's been really good to see. And just while I'm talking about Zach, had 2 steals tonight as well. They didn't give him a block, but he had a block on somebody, on Day'Ron Sharp. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. His interior defense was solid tonight, so I had to. It's just looked a lot better as of late. That offensively and defensively, Zach's looked better. But to finish up this first quarter, Blake had a saucy, controlled layup. He's one of the fastest players in the league. Also, that's another Spurs cast stat that they mentioned. He's 5th in the league when it comes to miles per hour, like being tracked. Yeah.
Nice.
And it's like 4.5 or 4.7. I can't remember the exact number. But it was first on the Spurs, 5th in the league. So we see that speed from Blake. Some missed opportunities late in the quarter, but a clutch 3 from Keldon. A really good quarter overall for him. That put us down 29-25. Would have been 29-22 without that Keldon Johnson 3. So a lot of good stuff that I mentioned there, Ethan, but you also noticed how I said there were some turnovers, some fouls, some missed shots, missed opportunities. That was kind of that is what gave the Nets a 4-point win here. That's just 2 possessions that those type of things will cause you to do.
Well, I think you covered everything perfectly. The only thing I would add on to it is, to me, the most glaring deficiency and something that continued into each quarter for us was defensively, we really struggled to guard the pick and roll, no matter who the ball handler was, whether it be Cam Thomas, Dennis Schroeder, Dennis Smith Jr. It was working all night long. They were penetrating, kicking it out to wide open shooters, or getting easy layups from the rolling big. So Obviously, we were able to win this game and kind of step up our defense late, but that was something that continually gave us problems. Um, so going into the second quarter, started off with a strong layup from Malachi Branham, who really struggled tonight. Only 2 for 8, 7 points. I think he picked it up late, like third, fourth quarter. He had a couple extra baskets that kind of made his stat line look better. But in that first half, and especially in the second quarter, he was really driving the struggle bus there. I'm glad he somehow managed to get a +5 in the box score, because that's not what I saw, Jude. I don't know if you saw something differently. Um, the next play, Wemby took the handoff, crossover, almost got the and one with a left-handed layup over, I believe it was Nick Claxton, who he played much better against offensively and defensively. Better patience, I felt like, from Victor all night long. Chetty came into the game, immediately started feeding Wemby in the post. Wemby rewarded him with a couple givebacks underneath, because Chetty's such a smart player. He just understands, okay, there's going to be an open space if I stay in the dunker spot for a second. My man's not looking at me. He fills the empty negative space, and Wemby's such a great passer. He's able to find those guys. He had 7 assists tonight, Victor Wembanyama, so continuing to make strides in that area as well. Jeremy came back, turned it over, fouled, and won for McHale. So that was like a negative play from Jeremy Sohan. He did that a couple times tonight. And just to speak on his offensive game, I know he struggled to shoot, only 1 for 8 from the field. He did have 3 turnovers, a couple fouls, only 4 points. But he had 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and defensively, I felt like he did a great job on Mikal Bridges. And when we switched him on to Cam Thomas and Dennis Schroeder, he also was able to kind of slow them down a little bit better than Trey Jones and Blake Wesley were early in the game. So you still have to give him his props. Those things don't often show up on the box score. We were missing way too many threes. That continued. We shot 24% from 3, but luckily the Nets also shot 25% from 3, so they didn't really have an unfair advantage in that area. Chetty drew a charge off of a turnover, continuing to be that veteran presence for us on both sides of the court. Sohan had a steal off of an entry pass that led to another Chetty 3. I felt like we were really pushing the pace well. We just couldn't get easy shots to fall in this quarter. This is where Zach had his block, like you were saying, and then drew a foul immediately after that. Definitely a much better game from Zach Collins. I know in the box score, only 6 points, 7 rebounds, and of course, from time to time, he's going to be out physicaled just because of his stature, but definitely improved his physicality and the presence that he has down low. There was a tough and one floater from Trey Jones, who also had a pretty solid game tonight. Miscommunications leading to turnovers leads to easy layups for the Nets in transition. They also switched to a zone, which kind of hampered our offense for a little bit in the half court. But Keldon Johnson then came back in and continued to be a big spark for us. He had back-to-back threes, then hit his and one 3 that you talked about. Trey had a drive and drop off to Jeremy for an easy slam. These are momentum plays. They followed it up with another steal and a layup, brought it back to a 1-point game late in the second quarter. And then I wrote 3 times in a row, can't stop Schroeder. He's a Spurs killer. Every time we play against him, he just goes crazy. A good veteran point guard for them. Great D from Jeremy Sohan and Trey Jones on that last possession. Jeremy went for a steal, almost got beat, but Trey Jones was able to pick up his man and force a tough shot for the Nets. Devin beat the buzzer with a 2-handed dunk. Or actually, he didn't beat the buzzer. There was like 5 seconds left, because then Trey had another steal, and the Spurs were able to finish the half 56-55 with all the momentum on their side. How many steals did Trey Jones have at the end of the game?
He had 3.
So big game for him. I know he gets beat often because of his lack of athleticism, and obviously he's not the biggest dude in the world. But a smart, high IQ defender. He can pick the ball loose every once in a while, play the passing lanes. So he's able to make up for it in some ways.
Absolutely, Ethan. I think my favorite part about that quarter is definitely the finish, because as we mentioned earlier, it kind of felt like all game there were moments where it felt like the Nets were maybe going to pull away with some momentum. And while that kind of has been a theme for the Spurs all year, sometimes is that can happen in games just because, once again, the Spurs are 15-53. There have been a lot of halves that the Spurs have not closed well this season.
Mm-hmm.
So to see them do that in a potential turning point in the game, if you
Yep.
will. Obviously, this ended up being close the entire time, but at that moment, that was huge to go in under, with just a 1 point deficit. And also, I think the steal from Trey at the end of that, just to, stop any chance of them getting some crazy buzzer beating three to gain the momentum back, even
Yep.
though that would only be a 4 point difference. That would be a big play. They really closed out those last two possessions, and that gave us some juice heading into halftime.
Most definitely, Jude.
Alrighty, moving into the third. So once again, Wemby set the tone from the jump defensively, Ethan, specifically against Nick Claxton.
Yep.
Nick Claxton was right under the basket. He tried to go with 2 straight dunks. Wemby swatted both. Made it easy. It's like, yes, bro, you're 6'11". Most people you're going to do this to, but you've learned your lesson now. We've seen other guys try to do that who were like way smaller, and it's like, okay, man. I mean, even in this one, it was still like, what are you doing? But it was just a good reminder, regardless. But I did kind of feel a little bit like, I'm sure that Nick Claxton, nobody's really does that to him other than Victor. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But still, why are you doing that? Anyways, love to see him setting the tone. That's the main point. We had some good cleanup from Vic also on the next play. Had a nice little tip in on a Devin miss, I believe. We did end up getting away with a goaltend on 2 free throws for Cam Thomas, but with a lot of how a lot of we did get a good bit of calls, but anyways, there's something sticking out in my mind, Ethan, that there was another call that went the other way that kind of evened that out, but that's really besides the point. I'm thinking of an and one that happened later that Day'Ron Sharp got on Zach Collins that ended up being nullified anyway because Dennis Smith Jr. ended up getting a tech.
That's right.
But that was later in the game. But that's what I was just thinking of there. Anyways, we did get away with a goaltend, but there was one move, Ethan. And, normally when we have awards, we have our Wemby moment of the game. This was a big candidate. There were so many plays from him that I don't know if this is the exact one I'd pick, but just for the sake of conversation, I'll say it was. He had this behind the back drive where he got it over. I forget who was guarding him, but he floated it up, with nice touch and got it to bank in. That would be a candidate for that award. What a great play from Victor. We had a fantastic give and go lob from Devin to Wemby. We had good intensity to start the third, but at the same time, Ethan, we had no answer for Cam Thomas on the defensive end of the floor, which allowed them to kind of keep pace with us, despite us having good intensity to start this the third quarter. The other thing I wrote down is Wemby vision. And I've said this before in a lot of our post games. And when I write that down, that means it's him with his back to the basket, surveying and distributing to cutters. You mentioned him doing that to Shetty a lot in the second quarter. Another thing on Shetty, I love how when we did our preview for the I-35 series on Thursday, Ethan, it said he was out for this game, but then now, of course, he plays. But what I will say about that, my hunch there is the Spurs wanted to win this one, so we played Shetty, which I think is fair. But anyways, he was doing that with other guys as well. I believe he got Devin and Jeremy on a couple in the third, but the vision from Wemby continues. 7 assists from him tonight, and I love to see him working out of the post and just finding guys, moving towards the basket. It adds a lot of motion to our offense where it's not just him having to do all the work off the ball. We had solid help rotations. I really liked how after we double teamed guys, when they'd pass off, we were sprinting back, making sure that guys weren't, just getting open shots. Keldon had 3 missed open threes after switching to the other basket. That's what I wrote down. I said stupid basket change because those other 4 that he hit in the first half were just nasty. But it doesn't matter because after those 3 misses, he slowed down a little bit and started taking it to the hole. And that's something I've said this season. It's not that I don't want Keldon to shoot threes. Like, I know he can, but also you've got the physicality driving to the rack, use it. And when he did that tonight, that allowed for him to get back in rhythm and make a clutch 3 later on in the game in the fourth quarter. Zach was more prevalent as a hub. That's another thing I wrote down. Zach interior defense, much improved. There was a solid hustle. Here's one positive Malachi play that I have tonight. Granted, it was after a turnover, but he had a solid hustle play after a turnover where he didn't get a block, but he forced a miss with a really tough contest at the rim. Unfortunately, that is when the phantom foul on Zach happened, which led to the and one on Day'Ron Sharp. But the good thing is that was not only was that nullified because of the technical free throw we got, but he didn't make the and one free throw on that either. So that basically only amounted to a 1 point, swing, if you even want to call it a swing. But the point is, the Nets only got 1 point out of that foul, because of the technical free throw and not making the and one free throw.
Mm.
So that was nice. We also, in the end of this quarter, we were playing Malachi as the point guard solely. And even when we bring in Blake, not to bleed into your notes here, Ethan, but even when we brought in Blake in the fourth, we were running some plays like where Blake was the two and Malachi was the main facilitator. To be honest with you, I, when you have Blake there, I didn't really like it that much,
Mhm.
and it kind of was short lived. But more importantly, in the third quarter, there was a very tough Victor Wembanyama ISO with 7 seconds left to get a bucket right before halftime, which I believe made it 83-80. I could be off on the
Mm.
score there, but regardless, Spurs lost this one 27-25. But really, it was just back and forth scoring the entire time. If and going back to the beginning of the quarter, I hate to just make it all about Cam Thomas, but I mean, when you lose that quarter by 2 points and he
Mhm.
was scoring the way that he was today, and in the fashion that he was manipulating the defense, making shots at tough angles, and also creating open shots as well. That's kind of the difference in the third quarter, I would say.
Yeah, well, Cam Thomas's assassination attempt on the Spurs defense continued into the fourth quarter, Jude. I mean, the guy attacks space. He's a killer. I think he's perfect as a six man for any team. Like eventually down the road, just be an absolute bucket, kind of like Jordan Clarkson was in his prime for Utah. Um, Obviously, he probably disagrees. He probably thinks he's an all star player because that's just the level of confidence that he plays with. But yeah, there was nobody that could stop him, especially when he was going downhill on pick and roll. He just changes direction so quickly and can get his shot off despite only being 6'3". Um, but the fourth quarter, it started with a Wemby absurd swat, which led to great transition play, great ball movement that led to an easy layup for Chetty Osman. Finally, Malachi hit another shot off of a nice cut in the fourth quarter as well. I agree. I didn't really vibe with him playing point guard for as long as he did. Um, uh, to be fair to him, he was being pressured heavily by Dennis Smith Jr. And Dennis Smith Jr. was hounding a lot of guys, not just Malachi, but Malachi, it felt like, really struggled, particularly against Dennis Smith Jr.'s defense. So I would have rather had played Blake, like you said, or let Devin bring the ball up at that point, because I think Devin was also in the game at the same time. Chetty hit another three. He's been huge, just being a consistent veteran for us tonight. Everyone having a hard time with Dennis Smith's defense. We cannot stop penetration right now. The Nets are getting extra opportunities off of missed layups. Felt like we kind of dipped in our energy for a little bit. We were down 10 at 6:15. Lackadaisical cuts, lackadaisical handoffs. The Sharp versus Sohan situation, which led to a flagrant one on Sharp for tripping Jeremy Sohan. We got 2 free throws off of that. Then we got back-to-back threes from Devin Vassell and Victor Wembanyama. So because of that flagrant, we really had an 8-point swing where we were just down 10. Now suddenly it's a 2-point game. The Spurs have all of the energy, and the Nets looked a little bit deflated. Um, KJ forced a jump ball off of great defense. Jeremy fouled Cam Thomas on a jumper. It was close. Like we thought about challenging it, but I think Jeremy did get his arm. So obviously Cam Thomas got 2 free throws out of that. Devin hit a timely mid-range jumper. He continued to do so as the game winded down. Vic had a tip back, forced a 3-point game. Vic throws it to KJ, who didn't see it. Turnover, still a 3-point game. Luckily, our defense down the stretch was a lot better, and the Nets honestly were just missing some easy shots. Like Dennis Schroeder missed a couple bunnies that he was hitting in the first 3 quarters. Trey
The
had a
clutch
great.
got to him, Ethan. That's what I'd say.
I would say the same thing. So after that turnover, after the Nets missed their shot, Dev and Vic were in pick and roll, led to a Vic slam tie game. Trey Jones had phenomenal defense the next play down on Mikal Bridges. Mikal got the switch he wanted, thought it was going to be easy work, and Trey Jones, give him credit, was physical, forced him to spin baseline and take a tough shot. Spurs rebound. KJ hit a big three in the corner for the lead. Timeout nets. Schroeder's a Spur killer. Screw him. He had a wide open three off of some miscommunication, knocked it down, tie game. And then we had one of the worst last possessions I have ever seen. I think we had, 15 seconds left in the game, and it took
Something like that.
probably 13 seconds just to get the ball like close to the 3-point line. And obviously, we didn't get a great shot off. Vic, I think, just threw it up, and it didn't even hit rim. I
It
don't
was like near half court almost.
for at least 5 or 10 seconds. Like, it was just hanging out there. But I don't. Was it Trey Jones or was it Devin? I don't know.
They both tried to dribble it, and then they got it to Wemby, and that's what I was actually referring to there. I was saying Wemby's shot that he threw up was almost
Basically.
near freaking half court. Like, anyways,
Yeah, terrible execution, but it led to overtime where we won. I don't know who wants to cover overtime. Do you want to do it? Or
Well, so that was the thing. To be honest with you, I didn't take any notes because I just
okay.
watched overtime. Did you take some?
I did take notes.
Okay, well then you take.
Let's go right into it. I don't have that many, but great throw ahead from Trey to Dev off a full court pass for a slam. Dorian Finney-Smith had 2 back-to-back steals, one on Wemby, one on I don't know who, but the second one led to a dunk. Wemby off the glass with a hook shot, reminiscent of Tim Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Sohan blew a wide-open layup after a steal. I don't know if it got blocked. It looked like he just missed it.
He missed it. He's been making that the past couple games, like that specific type of layup, kind of going coast to coast, which is why I think he took it. But yeah, unfortunately, he just whiffed there.
I think he's just going too fast. He wasn't under control. Wemby had another block. I don't ever keep track of what the block was because he just gets so many of them. So I just write Wemby block. Jeremy finds a wide open Devin for 3, but he missed it. But Dorian Finney-Smith fouled Wemby on the box out. We got possession. I wrote down, what is Jeremy doing? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Because he got the ball 2 times in a row where he was the point guard. The first one was okay, I guess, because he passed it off. And it's okay, good play. The second one, he just drove basically out of bounds. And I was like, what are you doing, Jeremy? But it worked out, so we're not going to harp on it too long. A Devin to Wemby lob to take the lead, followed by Victor Wembanyama blocking/pinning Mr. Schroeder's shot against the glass. And then a great play from KJ. Great play, KJ layup off of great passing. Oh, I remember. Yeah, off the inbound, we all had great passing. Basically, nobody put the ball on the floor. It led to a KJ easy layup. Then I think he had to hit those free throws to really take control of the lead. And then Keldon also secured the rebound to secure the Spurs win, and then went crazy in the post-game interview.
12-5 overall. The Spurs won overtime by 7 points, Ethan. Just to harp on some of overtime and the fourth quarter, I believe after the Day'Ron Sharpe flagrant, I don't know if this is the final, this isn't accurate, I don't think, completely. But after the Keldon 3 in the fourth quarter, this is accurate. What I mean is this isn't like the final run that the Spurs went on. But what I'm trying to get to is the Spurs went on a 17-4 run after that flagrant foul. It was 8-2 at first, and after Keldon hit the 3 to make it 110-107, they were on a 17-4 run. So I think the Spurs might have gotten another basket in there. And obviously Brooklyn did too. So that would probably be 19-7 is what they kind of ended the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter on. And when you consider that they won the fourth quarter by just 3 points, that is the crucial response and bounce back that we were kind of talking about at just the beginning of this game, with the way that the Spurs were able to manage the ebbs and flows, fight through everything, and kind of persevere. Because that has just been a rarity in a season where the Spurs are 15-53 here on March 17th, Ethan.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Jude. A confidence-building win. Something I think the team needed, especially in Austin in front of this crowd. That was awesome. They were very loud. And hopefully we can build some good habits off of it.
Absolutely, Ethan. I am just so glad that the Spurs pulled this one out here in overtime, Ethan. Not just for our predictions, even though it's not all about that, but it's more even from what I remember, Ethan. At the beginning of the I-35 series preview that we did on Thursday, y'all go check that out if you haven't yet. You said, if we go 1-1 here and we get this win against the Nets, that would do a lot for my mental health.
It would.
And that's kind of how I feel right now, Ethan. I needed this one, and to see Keldon kind of have the same kind of moment that he had.
Mhm.
Obviously, this was a much better team than the Portland team that we played last year, but to kind of see that deja vu and to see him like yelling at the fans, because you go back to the beginning of the season, the opening press conference on media day, Keldon's kind of going at the media. It's like he hears what the media and the Spurs fans have been saying, but this is one of the moments that despite all that, he's grown up here and he really does have a love for this place, regardless of, what happens with the roster in the future. So I think I probably have some sentimentality, not just because Keldon's kind of came up with SSPN, I would say to an
For sure.
extent. Just when the way that we started the podcast, that was when he kind of started to emerge in his career as well. But also because I went to the game last year and I got to see it again. So Keldon loves the Austin energy.
I think when he referred to Spurs fans are the best in the world, Jude, I think he was really talking about us because I met him. So that's really what he was thinking in his mind. He's like, this is for that little 5'7" white guy that I met in the hallway at the Mavs game who said, man, we love watching the Spurs. And he was like, he literally said, he goes, oh man, it's been a rough year. And I was like, I don't care. We're watching every game. We're there with you. We love that you're playing. And he was like, man, I appreciate that. We dapped up. And I cried.
And that's why he screamed.
That's why he
post-game
screamed. He screamed for SSPN is what he screamed for, Jude. Mm-hmm. And I think we forget also, this is a guy that has fully embraced, without any backlash, the role of the sixth man. He came in as a starter. Like you said, there was a lot of noise about him being a trade piece, a guy that doesn't fit on this team, but the media. He's been a consummate pro and a leader for this team, and taking up the mantle of Manu Ginobili left behind as a sixth man with great professionalism. So very happy for him.
No complaints. You hope that these can be the type of the games moving forward for a long time for him in San Antonio. But you never know what's going to happen because we just made a video talking about the Spurs potentially making moves this offseason. Mm-hmm. And I made a clip about it today. So if you don't want to go watch the whole 50-minute podcast, you can at least go watch the 25-minute clip segment, if you will, that we put out today. Y'all go check that out for sure. We appreciate all you guys being in here. Two Clutch Corey, Robert Ball, Connor McLeod, Floyd Kizzy, Aaliyah Isabel, blah blah blah's in here as well. M Easy, Callow 5, all y'all. Adrian as well. All y'all are goats. Matt Wilson too, another OG. We appreciate you guys. It's a Spurs win. We're very happy about it. We hope this sends you off into the week with a smile on your face.
Likewise.
If you guys would like to support the channel, you can go ahead and check out our merch, sspn.myspreadshop.com. The link is in the channel description as well as the video description. And you can also hit that like and that subscribe button below, as well as following us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Go Spurs, go!